You know what happened on January 15th, 2009. I am sure you remember. You know that U.S. Airways flight number 1549 took off from LaGuardia Airport in New York City on a chilly Thursday afternoon, bound for Charlotte, North Carolina. You know that just minutes into the flight, the Airbus A320 struck a flock of geese and both engines failed. You know that Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger, with his co-pilot Jeffrey Skiles, made the split-second decision to glide the powerless aircraft onto the frigid Hudson River. You know that all 155 souls aboard survived, and the world called it a miracle. But now, the rest of this story. You see, Sully wasn't supposed to be on that flight. No, the schedule had been shifted. Another pilot had traded shifts that week, one of those everyday little decisions that ripple through time. A decision that unknowingly placed the right man in the right seat at the right moment. Sully had spent a lifetime preparing for something he didn't know he'd ever face. Decades in the Air Force, thousands of flight hours. He even studied the psychology of cockpit stress, how the mind reacts when seconds mean life or death. And the passengers, many were rushing home or headed to business meetings, some to weddings, others to funerals. One woman had missed her original flight and was rebooked, frustrated at first, until later she realized that missed plane may have saved her life. Then there was the ferryboat captain, out on the river that afternoon, not scheduled, just out a little early, and he saw the plane skim the water like a skipping stone. He moved fast, real fast. His crew pulled dozens from the freezing current, their skin already blue from the icy grip of January. What about the flight attendants? You know, they guided passengers to the wings, calmed the panic, even waded into the water themselves to help others out. Heroes, not in capes, but in soaked uniforms and shivering limbs. And then there was the voice on the radio, the air traffic controller, who kept calm, even as his screen showed the impossible. A plane descending with no power over one of the world's most populated cities. You know it was a miracle, but maybe it was 1,000 little miracles. A swapped shift, a calm mind, a practiced hand, a ready ferry, a prayer whispered. Maybe it was heaven's way of saying that sometimes, in the midst of chaos, grace lands gently like an aircraft on water. We often looked for miracles in the thunderclaps of life, in the sudden healings, the dramatic rescues, the lightning flashes of divine intervention. But the story of Flight 1549 reminds us that sometimes miracles whisper instead of roar. It wasn't just one heroic pilot or one perfect landing that day. It was 1,000 small threads of God's providence, woven quietly through the fabric of ordinary lives. Shifts, changes, delayed flights, calm minds, and ready hands. None of it made sense in the moment. Yet, when the crisis came, every small decision, every act of diligence, every unseen kindness came together in perfect harmony. And maybe that's the deeper message for us. God's miracles often begin long before the crisis comes. He prepares hearts, minds, and moments for what we cannot see. When chaos strikes, His grace is already in motion. Scripture reminds us, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to His purpose. So when you can't see how the pieces fit, remember the miracle on the Hudson. Remember that the same God who guided that plane to safety is guiding you through the storms of life. Because grace doesn't just fall from heaven, it lands right where God intends. That's how grace often works, not in the grand or the loud, but in the faithful preparation, the unseen obedience, the everyday choices made long before the storm hits. So when you are tempted to think your small acts don't matter, remember that every life, every moment, every prayer can be a quiet piece of a much larger miracle. Because miracles don't just happen. They flow through the river of God's grace. And maybe, just maybe, the real miracle wasn't just that everyone survived, but that in a cold world, humanity warmed up, people helped strangers, fear gave way to faith, and the headlines for once spoke of hope. And now that you know the rest of this story, you have a story to tell.